as we come to a close here, I want to just say: source, evaluate, qualify, under control, execute, negotiate, commission, expand, sequence. Everybody, get the book. It's a good read. You'll enjoy it and you'll learn a lot. Welcome again, everybody, to the Zelnik Exchange. I'm your host, Cory Zelnik, and today I have the privilege of spending time with Alan C. Buchanan, SIOR, from Lee & Associates in Orange County, California. Alan, I am going to check his bio. I'm going to read it to you folks. Alan C. Buchanan is a commercial real estate broker, author, and speaker. Alan joined Lee & Associates Commercial Real Estate Services, Inc., Orange in 1984 after 5 years in the consumer goods business with Procter & Gamble Distributing Company and the Ernest and Julio Gallo Winery. Alan has spent his real estate career in the industrial arena in Southern California, specifically Orange, Los Angeles, and Riverside counties. Alan provides location advice to owners and occupants of industrial real estate. Alan became a shareholder in Lee & Associates Commercial Real Estate Services, Inc., Orange office in 1988. Alan is continually recognized as a top 5 producer of the Orange office. In addition to being a highly regarded broker of industrial real estate in California, Alan has been a distinguished voice in the commercial real estate, social media, and technology community since he started his location advice blog in 2010. Alan's posts are published weekly in the Sunday real estate section of the Orange County Register, Orange County, California's daily newspaper. Ever the forward thinker, Alan is the creator of the popular YouTube video series Tuesday's Traffic Tips, where he creates weekly 1 to 2 minute clips offering pragmatic advice for the commercial real estate professionals. Alan has been named to the prestigious Top 10 Online Commercial Real Estate Professionals list for the past 3 years. I know Alan resides in California with his wife, Carla, of over 46 years, and I know he's got kids and grandkids, and I'll let him tell me about that when we get to it. So, Alan, welcome to the show.
Cory, thank you, man. I'm really looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, me as well. And so before we jump into it, let's tell everybody how we got here. So I walked into my office one day, and there's a package on my desk, and this book is in the package. It's called The Sequence, of which you are the author. It is a personal journey and proven framework for commercial real estate brokerage success. And it came from a mutual friend of ours, Richard Cohen. Didn't know why or what for, but the book was on my desk, and it said, he's a great guy. You need to speak with him. You need to read his book, and you need to have him on the podcast. So I will welcome you again. So, Alan, welcome aboard. It's, I went through the book, but I want you to tell me about you first. Take me there.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that, Cory. And it's really cool that our mutual friend, Richard Cohen, saw fit to send you a book. It's amazing how providential this is.
Yes.
Because you and I believe, are exchanging some sort of a tweet or a LinkedIn post or what have you. And I asked you, how on earth did you get a copy of my book? And you said, well, I got it. It was sent to me from a guy named Richard Cohen. I went, oh, I'll be darned, because Richard has been so kind. He's been so supportive. I think he bought 20 or something copies, and so far to date, I've sold 22. So thank you, Richard.
All right, there you go. And so just real quick, what's your connection to Richard? Because he's here in New York and you're out there.
Exactly. I was a client of the Massimo Group from 2018 until 2023.
Okay.
And my coach and Richard's coach are synonymous. And I hope I'm not breaching a confidence by telling you that, because I know some are okay with the fact that they're being coached and others aren't. So hopefully that's not a breach of etiquette.
Yeah,
that's how we know each other.
Yeah, no, I can't imagine he'd bother. And by the way, my previous podcast guest was Rod Santamassimo.
Sure.
I know Rod fairly well, and maybe you'll educate me in the course of this show and this discussion about what I've wrestled with Rod is understanding not what he does. I get what he does, but the effects on a leasing broker, because I'm strictly a leasing broker, and a lot of what he puts out seems to be very investment sales driven. And so we'll talk about that later. I'm really more interested. I'm certainly more interested in you. I was interested in Rod, so I kept him on his own cast, but now I have you. So, I did some homework on you. I got the book, so I did some diligence, and I was proud. I'm happy that I did do that. And I'm going to touch on some things, right? We're not going to read the book together, but I'm going to lob some things out there and allow you to tell your story. And one of the first things that hit me, and I forget if it was the intro or the first chapter, but you talk about camp and Boy Scout camp. And I was not a Boy Scout, but I was a camper. But I want to hear your story.
Yeah, it was. Frankly, it saved me because what preceded that, I'd been a Boy Scout and I had attended Scout camp as a camper for, I believe, 4 or 5 years. And prior to this year in camp, my parents had told the 3 of us kids they were getting a divorce. And so I was going to be homebound with a very distraught mom that was handling the divorce, in my opinion, very badly. I mean, fortunately, I've not experienced that, so I can't even imagine what she must have been experiencing. But anyway, my mom and I were very close, and I knew that if I hung around the house, it was just going to be devastating for both of us. So I went away to Camp Pioneer, Mena, Arkansas. I grew up in Arkansas. And about the 4th day in my camper week, the director of the camp approached me and he says, "How would you like to become a staff member?" And I was 14 years old at the time, and most of the staff members were significantly older. I was probably the youngest at the time. And I said, I would love to do that. That would be awesome. And, I don't know exactly how that came about. I have a sense. Certainly, it was providential. God was watching over me. But I have a sense that there may have been some strings pulled, possibly by my old man.
All right.
Because I know my dad supplied soft drinks to Camp Pioneer. He was a big contributor to the Boy Scouts of America. And, it was kind of too convenient. But anyway, I spent the summer at Camp Pioneer. I was the trading post assistant manager. There were only 2 of us. I was the assistant, and I worked under the guy that ran the trading post. So it was a time in my life where I needed time away. I needed time to kind of decompress, reset, figure out my path forward, and it was just a magical, magical time in my life.
And why it jumped out at me is because my folks went through a divorce also at a young age. I went to summer camp, regular summer camp, most summers, and it wasn't because of the divorce or anything like that, but it was always an escape. Why it resonates with me, after having read your book, is that today I do things that I learned in camp from a discipline perspective. Okay, I had a camp director who was I was so fond of, and was a very early on mentor before I even knew what mentor meant. Where he used to keep little notes, and he used to have these lists and all that stuff, to the point where I take, when we print out something every now and again, and I don't utilize it, I take it, I fold it in 4, and now I have sheets to keep notes, and I still keep.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, based on that, and
wow,
yeah. So that's why that stuck out at me when I read that. So I really appreciate that, and I get it.
Yeah.
And then another thing that I saw in there is that you talk about God. You had a little bit of you have a God focus, and I'm interested in hearing more about that from you, because I've been speaking to more and more people. For whatever reason, God comes up a little bit more often these days. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
It does indeed, and frankly, I'm just pleased beyond belief about that. I came to faith in Jesus Christ when I was 14, same era, just 14 years old, and that year of my life was so pivotal for so many reasons, but 2 of the biggest. My mom was diagnosed with breast cancer. And I'll never forget it. It was about this time of year. It was about October of 1970. And my mom came to us and she said, and by the way, my parents are still married at this point. So imagine this timing. So this is October 1970. Parents got divorced in, I think it was May or June of 1971. So within a 6-month period of time, this is happening. I'm 14 years old, 13, 14 years old.
Yep.
So my mom says I'm going in for surgery, and we said, well, what on earth? She goes, well, I went to the doctor and I discovered a little lump, and they don't think it's anything, but my mom's dad was a doctor. Based on that, they want to be ultimately precautious and make sure there's nothing there. So I'm sitting in homeroom. I get a call over the intercom. You'll remember this because I'm probably older, but we're about the same age.
Yep.
Anyway, Alan Buchanan, please come to the office. I go to the office. My grandfather and my great aunt are there in the lobby to pick me up. And from completely different sides of the family. Paternal grandfather, maternal great aunt. And I'm going, what on earth? But I knew something bad had happened, and I hoped to God my mom had not died. I go to the hospital, walk into the waiting room, and it's the wringing of hands, and it's the crying, and oh my God, and this and this. Well, it was so chaotic, I excused myself. I went to the men's room. I locked myself in a stall, and I had a frank talk with Jesus. And I said, Lord, I don't know what this means. I don't know really what you're about. I think I kind of have an idea, but look, here I am. I'm yours. Save my mom. And, he did. And lo and behold, my mom lived till 89 years old. The cancer miraculously was completely eradicated. And by the way, 1970, if you got a cancer diagnosis, that was a death sentence.
Yeah, right.
I mean, didn't survive that.
Sure.
So anyway, that's the way I came to faith. And I'll tell you, it was one of the most pivotal periods of my life as a young man. And little did I know that my faith was going to carry me through many trials and tribulations, including this crazy commercial real estate business that we love. But I can't imagine doing what we do, Cory, without faith, frankly, without faith. It's just, it's my North Star. It's my pivot point. I've believed that all my children and grandchildren have come to faith as well. And I just say, look, this is what it's all about. We're put on earth with a purpose. Hopefully you find yours. I've certainly found mine. And I believe part of my purpose is to help the 3 of you and the 6 of you grandchildren to find the Lord. So, and thanks for letting me share that.
No, please. I'm so happy to hear it. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. You take faith, right? You have now your faith, and thank God your mother lasted as long as she did, and that's wonderful. And life rolls on, and you're hanging out in Arkansas, and then you decide. I believe it's you and Carla at the time make a decision together to head out west.
Yeah, actually, I made the decision to head out west. We had fallen in love in March of our senior year. Talk about bad timing. March of our senior year, neither one of us were looking to have a long-term relationship. I asked her out on a whim. The first night we met, had a date. I knew that I had met the woman I was going to marry. I just didn't know how it was going to come about. And yeah, I made the error of not asking her to marry me before I came to California. I already had a job.
Okay.
And so I moved to California. I landed at San Francisco International Airport, and this absolute shroud of darkness enclosed me. And I said, I have made the biggest mistake of my entire life, like a Hollywood movie. And so, of course, I call, and she's not there. And I asked her mom, I said, well, where is she? She's 2 hours ahead, obviously. Where is she? Well, I don't know. I think she's out on a date. And I went, a date? I literally just left home 3 hours ago. What's going on? So anyway, we connected. I said, look, I need to rethink this. We need to rethink this. I've made a mistake. I want you to come visit. Let's talk about it. I think it might make sense for us to consider getting married. And 3 months later, we were.
I shall say mazel tov, right? Good for you. That's very exciting. And again, not trying to go through the entire book, word for word, but we talked about the Procter and Gamble, and I mentioned Ernest and Julio Gallo because it's in the bio. And so you did that little bit of a grind. If you want to mention any of that, I leave that to you. But I'd like to get more into the real estate aspect of things, because I think it's probably most of what the listeners want to hear. And quite frankly, I'm a little bit more interested in some of that stuff just the same. But if there's something that you want to touch on as a lesson from P&G or E&J, please, take it away. Tell me about the start of real estate for you in what I believe is 1984.
Yes. Yeah, the only comment I'll make, Cory, is all that's foundational, right?
Yep.
It's all foundational. And I believe if your listeners will take a look at their careers, they will realize as well that careers are foundational. The title of my book is The Sequence. Mm-hmm. And as you know from reading it, the sequence is a double entendre. The first meaning of the sequence is the steps of a commercial real estate transaction. Mm-hmm. The sourcing, the evaluating, the qualifying, et cetera. But the bigger meaning of sequence is the sequence of your commercial real estate career, the sequence of your life, mm-hmm. the decisions you make, who you love, where you live,
right,
how you choose to make a living. All those are sequential and all those are foundational.
Sure. You make the decision, right? You're going into commercial and you choose. Did you choose industrial day one? Was that when you hit it with Lee? Was it about industrial day one?
Yes, de facto. However, I had no idea what an industrial building was versus an office building versus a retail strip center. No clue.
Okay.
But was fortunate that I had some mentors, and that was their specialty. Mm-hmm. So they folded me into their practice in a sense.
Yep.
And their practice was family held, owners and occupants of industrial buildings in Southern California. So bingo, once again, providential.
Yes, that's great. You had one little lesson in there that I took note of about having, your understanding with your team at the time. You had something in writing, but there wasn't enough muscle behind it, or you weren't experienced enough to know better. It made me think of an old cliche that I was told, that a short pencil is better than a long memory, because you had it was more than a paragraph covering you on a whole bunch of stuff, except for that one other thing, right?
Right.
And you got,
yes.
We don't have to hold back here, right? You got screwed on something.
Totally.
Right.
But it was one of the best lessons I ever learned. And I couldn't, the weird thing was I couldn't believe that these gentlemen who are really good guys,
right,
really, really good guys, to this day, I still talk to one of them pretty regularly.
Yeah, and you spoke highly. I apologize. You spoke highly of them as mentors, and
yes, they knew their chops.
Yep,
they knew their chops. But if I'm completely transparent, I have to say that they knew what we were signing. I didn't necessarily know what we were signing, and I didn't even know to ask the questions to understand what I didn't know. What I didn't know. Right. That's so cliche, but it was so true in this regard. And for your listeners who don't have the benefit of the history of the book, I signed an agreement with my mentors, which said I would be paid on 4 specific deals. Well, I started down the road doing everything under the sun for these 3. And lo and behold, the deal closed. And guess what? It wasn't one of the 4, and Alan didn't get a slice.
Right.
And I walked out to the car. My wife and I were sharing a car. We were schlepping our 6-month-old baby back and forth to daycare on about an hour and a half commute. And I was in tears.
Yeah.
She said, "What happened?" I told her, and it was like, well, could have gone one or two ways at that point. Let's pack our tent, go home, or let's toughen up and get that figured out and never let that happen again. Right. And fortunately, we chose the second path.
Yes, and that fortune is to say the least. And I would imagine, and it's probably in there. And again, I told you I went through the book. I didn't read it entirely word for word, but I did grab a lot of it. But I would imagine you're the kind of guy that when you bring in that junior person, you're probably advising him as to what he doesn't know, so that you're both on the same page, so it never happens.
Well, not only a young person in the business, but I like to believe you think about what we do and who we represent. Mm-hmm. And in my case, with family-owned and operated companies, a commercial real estate transaction is not an everyday occurrence. It's maybe a 1 or a 2 or 3 times in their career. And so there's a ton that they don't know. And I like to believe that I help educate them. Look, I know you didn't ask, but here's something you really need to consider.
Right.
Your landlord is going to pass through any increases in property taxes to you. Now, mm-hmm. Here's what that means in dollars and cents.
Right.
And I just believe that gives me an advantage.
No,
knowing that I got somewhat hosed on an agreement.
Sure.
Let's make sure that doesn't happen to someone I represent.
Right. And then I think you take that into talking about control.
Yes.
And how you utilize, you talk about control as not, being egotistical, but that control just is about clarity. So everybody knows where they are in the game plan.
Correct. Control allows us as practitioners to do our very best work. Mm-hmm. Without control, it is a crapshoot.
Yeah.
And I believe a mistake that a lot of occupant side representatives make is they don't get anything in writing. They don't have an engagement. Mm-hmm. A client would never hire a CPA without an engagement agreement. They would never hire an attorney. Why are you hiring a commercial real estate agent? Some would say, well, gee, they don't pay you, so consequently they don't need to engage you. Well, they're engaging your services. Mm-hmm. Your services are going to be paid for in the marketplace. And wouldn't you want your service provider to provide the very best service for you? And in my opinion, sans an agreement, you just can't have that sort of relationship.
Yeah, I know. I hear what you're saying loud and clear overall, but I have found, there is some old school stuff that I've been involved with, fortunately, and it comes with time. It comes with time in. But I've had some long-standing relationships, and I'm not knock a little wood, that are based on a handshake.
Yes.
24 years exclusive agreement with a landlord, nothing in writing. 19 years running exclusive agreement with Panda Express to do their locations, nothing in writing, and a couple of others, a little less time, but also long-standing as our relationship goes. I would not say that's common practice or the best practice, but there are certain things that you pick up on over time. But I hear you.
Yes.
And again, not to be overly redundant, but it seems to come up always. A short pencil is better than a long memory for most situations in our business.
Yeah, without a doubt. It's just a couple of quick examples. I was sitting with a young practitioner yesterday, and he has been with our company for 5 months. And is plotting the next 6 months of his life, and I'm helping him plot that. I'm not his mentor per se, but I am responsible for his training. And I was in with another young producer, and the other young producer says, "Do you have an agreement with your mentor in writing as to what the next 6 months is going to look like?" And he goes, "No, I don't." And this other young producer says, "Well, you need to get something." And he goes, "Well, understand, I've known this family since I was in the 5th grade. Mm-hmm. I don't think that they would purposely do something untoward." And my point to him was, I believe that's true. However, what happens if your mentor gets hit by a bus tomorrow?
Right.
And now you're dealing with his family.
Yep.
We're talking about significant dollars here. There needs to be an understanding as to how these are going to be shared, et cetera. So it's not just because they might do something untoward.
Right.
It's because of the unpredictability, frankly, of the future. You just don't know.
I couldn't agree with you more. And whether it's an agreement, understanding, or what have you, it's something I learned early on in my career. And I know that most things are on computers now. But I still keep a file. I have my guys keep physical files on things. But when I talk them through the file itself, I said, listen, you're really not making the file for yourself. Yeah, you are, but you're really not. It's for the guy who has to read it. It's for, one, the God forbid something happens to you. But in a more practical perspective, it's when you're on the street and you need information and you call somebody in the office who has no idea and you just say, go pull the file so they can comprehend it.
Right.
Is important. And so you just shouldn't have a pile of junk in the file. You should keep it systematic. But I hear you loud and clear. Having things in writing is super important. I want to take a half a step back a little bit, because we already jumped into you doing what you do, but there were some important things that you learned along the way. In the beginning, you talked about learning how to network. That you went to a networking group. And you're laughing and I laugh because I had a little bit of an experience when we came out of COVID. I got pulled into, and I say it politely, pulled into BNI, which I think is similar to, I think you were with Vistage, was the group, was that, or something like that?
No, it actually was a BNI group.
Oh, was it BNI? So,
yeah.
Okay, because you didn't mention that in the book.
Purposely.
Oh, okay.
Because anything you mention, you have to ask for permission. And
Got
Meisner's a beer guy. I've been on his podcast. I learned a ton.
Sure.
To this day. Anyway, I just didn't want to. I didn't want to get crossways there. And
it's hysterical because I was reading and I'm like, this guy, and I said to myself, this guy's sitting at a BNI, because I did the same thing.
Yeah.
And I did the same thing you did, because I had not experienced it before. And initially in those days, when we started, it was very much, all Zoom related, because we were all coming out of COVID, at the time. And I smiled, when I saw your final commercial, your revised commercial, because I did the same thing. You went with provides location advice to owners and occupants of industrial buildings in Southern California, which is
right.
That's a perfect BNI commercial. And mine was, I lease retail space in the New York City metropolitan area. I represent landlords and tenants and all of their retail needs. That was me, right? It was great.
That says it. Yeah, but man, was that? Oh my gosh, I've never experienced the amount of energy. You've been to a meeting, so you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I've never experienced the amount of energy that was in that room. It was absolutely infectious. And I went home and told my wife, I said, I have got to join this group. I don't know how, because I can't afford it. We're just coming out of, I couldn't afford the entry fee, believe it or not. We're just coming out of the great financial crisis. But I knew that there was something there that was going to portend great things for the future. And I was very, very right, because I did not know how to network. Mm-hmm. I thought I did, but I did not know how to network.
Right.
And by George, if you adhere to the principles of that organization, they will flat teach you how to network.
Yep.
It will flat teach you how to network.
Yeah, I found it very helpful from a networking perspective. I did not find it helpful from a referral perspective, and maybe it was the nature of my business relative to the group I was in, or what have you. But interestingly enough, and I know the guy who runs the chapter happens to be an old friend of mine, and that's how I got it. And that's how I went in initially. But I have interestingly found more referral business from the group in the 3 or 4 years that I've been out of the group for whatever reason.
Right.
And I said to my friend Todd, who runs it, I said, I got to tell you, I'm grateful for you pulling me into this thing. And I'm grateful for the additional friendships that I picked up along the way, because, business is business, but you're spending every single week with a whole bunch of people and you get to know some of them.
Right.
And I met some people in the group that I consider now will be lifelong friends. And it's sort of odd at our stage of life to say that, right? It's one thing,
yes.
Business contacts, but I'm grateful to him for that. Just so interesting. Moving forward, you talk about, we talked about him earlier, but the Massimo Group. So at what point,
Yes.
You talked about, you're a top level producer in the group, but you really want to be, one, two, you want to be in the top tier. What was it? What was the trigger to go Massimo or to go coaching at all?
It happened. It happened exactly this way, Corey. So I was a consistent top producer. I never believed that I was an elite producer, and I know that means different things to different people. Mm-hmm. In your market, that could mean $5 million a year in gross commission income. Mm-hmm. In my market, it didn't mean 5 million, but it meant something with 7 figures in front of it.
Sure.
I had not achieved that. I had achieved consistent, mid to high 6-figure production, but never 7-figure production, and I wanted to do it. I knew I'd seen people do it, and I knew that I had the capabilities if I just was mindful, but I didn't frankly know how to do it. And so Massimo is on my radar as it is. Rod does a phenomenal job of marketing, and so I knew who the Massimo Group was.
Okay.
And I was frankly a bit concerned that I was going to be forced into some sort of a box. You must do it this way or else. And I didn't want that because I just had a different idea as to how I wanted my quote unquote coaching to go. So I looked into it deeply in 2017. I opted not to do it because once again, I just didn't get the good vibe that, hey, this is going to be, it just felt too boiler roomish to me, if that makes sense. And by the way, I'm not talking out of school. I've shared this with Rod.
Right.
Because I didn't hire him the first go around, but then I hired him a year later. And the reason I hired him a year later is I'd known Bo Barron for decades. And Bo became Rod's COO. And so I called Bo and I said, look, I really want to do this, but I don't want a boiler room approach. That's not me.
Okay.
He says, Alan, there's nothing farther from the truth. But what really was the catalyst is my wife came into my office one day, and it was on a Saturday. I'll never forget it. She goes, I just finished a book by a young lady named Jen Sincero, and it's called How to Become a Badass. And she goes, if I gave you permission to become a badass producer in commercial real estate, what would you do? I said, the first thing I'd do is I'd hire the Massimo Group. She goes, then I want you to do it.
Okay.
She goes, but also do me this favor. Do what they tell you to do. Don't debate them. Don't argue with them. Don't try to do it your way. Do what they tell you to do. And so that's how it came about, and I did what they told me to do. And, I've been a 7-figure producer for the past 7 years in a row.
Good stuff.
Is it because of the market? Is it because of Massimo? Is it because of both? Look, this journey started, my first 7-figure year was 2019. Okay. Values in 2019 were not what they are today.
Right.
That also includes a COVID year. That also includes 2023, which was a down year for our industrial market. I've managed to maintain it throughout. It's because what I learned as a Massimo client. It absolutely transformed my career.
That's great. I think that's fabulous. And then another aspect of what you do is social media, right?
Yes.
You're great at social media, and I had the good fortune of spending some time with Coy Davidson at the CREI Summit. And,
oh, sure.
And what I said to him then, and I say it to you now as well, because you allude to it, is how early on, 2008, 2009, you guys were early into this game. And
yes.
I find it interesting because, we're in the same age sphere, and, you guys are certainly ahead of the curve. I feel like, on a daily basis, I'm still playing catch up. And I admire all you guys for what you've done. So talk about those first steps of social media.
It was absolutely the wild, wild west. And I keep referring to my wife, Carla, because she's frankly my biggest advocate, my biggest supporter, and my biggest mentor, if you will. She came in, she had gone to the Fashion Institute of Design and Merchandising, which was an advanced degree. This was when our kids left home and we were both in our 50s and, kind of now what do we do? And
Right.
she decided, hey, I've always wanted to be in the apparel manufacturing business, so I'm going to go learn how to do that. Great. She came home after about a week in class and she goes, you need to start blogging. And I said, well, I already blog she goes, no, not flog. You need to blog.
Right.
And I said, what does that mean? She goes, well, you write about what you do and you post it online. And I said, if I write what I do, that's the most boring thing on the planet. She goes, no, you're missing the point. Do what you do, write about it, post it online. Before you know it, you're going to have this digital footprint. And when people search for how to look for commercial real estate, how to choose a broker, how to negotiate a commercial real estate lease, you're going to have the digital footprint. She goes, it's called working out loud. She goes, you work once, you publish it, then you have it.
Yep.
And I said, all right, how do I do that? She goes, well, go online, figure out. There are many blogging platforms. Choose the free one because you don't know how it's going to work out. So I did blogger.com. I still have a Blogger account to this day, and I still post on a weekly basis to that blog. And it was one of the most pivotal steps I ever made. And mind you, when I did this in 2009, people thought I was crazy. Yeah. You are absolutely nuts. Yeah. Nothing's ever going to come for this. The internet's just a yellow pages. No one goes online. No one cares. You're just wasting your time. And flash forward, we had a bonus meeting in 2010, and this is after I'd been blogging for about a year and a half, and I was the number two producer that year. And one of my partners pulled me aside. He goes, hey, tell me about this blogging.
What is that blogging thing you're doing? What is that shit?
Tell me about that blogging. But at the time I started, there were two people doing it, Coy Davidson and Duke Long.
Right.
Coy obviously is still around. Duke is around too, but just not as active.
Uh-huh.
But Duke wrote the most amazing, edgy content. You couldn't wait for a new post to read it because it was just so interesting. Coy was more of a practitioner. He wrote about Houston and medical office space, and he was just starting to do business with Methodist Hospital in Houston, and was really, you could tell he was a consummate both, but Coy is especially consummate professional. So I chose a voice that was somewhere in between. I didn't want to be strictly practitioner, write about what I do. I wanted a little bit more social media, brokerage advice, etc. So I chose kind of a middle path between Coy and Duke.
Nice. It's funny. What I've been doing here over the last, 3 or 4 years, Steph, we're trying to build something. And I know, because I'm a New York City born and raised, that within the industry, there's a New York City snobbery to the whole social media stuff. And so like I'm an outcast in a fun way, right? You have the bunch of people that follow you and all that, and those that make fun of you. And then you see certain executives on the street and they say, oh, I love your stuff, but you never see them anywhere. And so I get a kick out of it. And I have fun with the fact that I have one daughter, she's 23. And when I started posting on Instagram and what have you, I knew that I had a good post when she says, Dad, that was cringe. So then I knew I had a good post. that's how I made it.
That was cringe.
And then when Ken Ashley put together the CREI Summit, the organization, and then I became, on their Instagram list, their LinkedIn, I'm on their lists as an influencer. I called my daughter one day and I said, hey, I'm an influencer before you are. So
yeah, that's awesome.
It was good stuff.
That's so cool.
It's really great stuff. And, I had said to you, pre-tape, I think you and I could talk for hours. And I hope this is a good start of a conversation for you and I to have offline. Because I think you have a lot of news and notes and tips that I want to absorb along the way. So if you don't mind, I may take advantage of this newfound relationship.
And I would expect nothing less. That would be fantastic. And that truly would. Yeah,
that'd be great. And so, as we come to a close here, I want to just say source, evaluate, qualify, under control, execute, negotiate, commission, expand. Sequence. Everybody, get the book. It's a good read. You'll enjoy it and you'll learn a lot. Alan, thank you so much for your time. It was great spending some time with you. And again, I look forward to spending some time with you offline in the future.
Sounds tremendous. Thank you so much for your invitation and for what you do.
Thanks, Alan.